Arrowhead of the National Park Service, Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site. Oral History Interview, Robin Woods Loucks, produced by Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site. Robin Woods Loucks appears on the screen. She was a student at Central during the crisis.
The main thing to try to remember is to use complete sentences if you can. You know, if she says, how old are you? And you say 35. Well then, we don't know what 35 refers to if you say I'm 35. Because we won't hear her questions.
Oh, you won't? Okay.
We will not hear her questions. That's why it's really important to try to speak in complete sentences when you can.
Be articulate, in other words. Try to be articulate, in other words.
Mainly complete sentences.
Okay.
Good morning. Would you please state your name and occupation, please?
Yes, my name is Robin Woods Loucks, and I'm an artist, and I'm also involved in nutraceutical sales.
And Robin, tell us about your relationship with Central High School.
Central High School was very important to me. I did my freshman or sophomore and junior years there in 1956-57.
So you actually attended the school?
I did. Yes, I did.
What was that experience like?
It was pretty devastating. After that year was over, it probably took me another 10 years to be able to truly start coming to grips with it.
What was your classification in 1957 at the school?
I was a junior.
Now, in what way did the 1957 events affect you personally?
It, in many respects, changed my rather naive viewpoint of what human nature was like. And it was very difficult to come to grips with the sort of hatred I saw that I couldn't believe in the United States.
You want to tell us about what you saw?
Yes. As far as I knew, when that year was starting, there was going to be no problem. Everybody knew that integration was coming. The community had voted on it, and it never occurred to me or to my friends that there would be any problem about it whatsoever. And the first morning that I went to school and saw this crowd of hoodlums in front of the school jumping up and down, I could not believe it. And the walk that Elizabeth Eckford made down in the front of Central, I came up upon that as she walked clear across the front of the school from 14th and Park all the way up to the other end of the block, which is a very long block. And I came to school from the south and heard this mob yelling at her and saw the last part of her walk as she turned and went to sit by the bus stop. There were maybe 6 or 7 deep crowd between me and her, and I was absolutely devastated to see what people were doing to her. I could not believe it, and I wanted to go walk with her, and I couldn't get through the crowd. And that, I think, is something that will haunt me the rest of my life, that I couldn't do that. Because of that, it took another 3 weeks for the students to come into school. And I had an experience in my algebra class in which I sat at the back of the room, and Terrence Roberts, who was one of the 9, came in. And he walked into that room that day, and you could have heard a pin drop. Nobody would talk to him, nobody would look at him, and he didn't have a book. And I picked up my chair and pushed it over close to his, and I shared my algebra book with him.
I'm sure he was pleased and happy to...
He was about as scared as I was.
Well, were you afraid of the reaction that you might have received later from your...
It never occurred to me that there would be one. It really never did. And I got hate mail, I got hate phone calls. People followed me home from school and spat on me that day. And I have never been so angry in my life. Angry that people could do that.
Well, how do you feel about your decision today that you were able to share?
I did the right thing. Of course I did the right thing. You do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And the behavior of the segregationists violated every Christian tenet, then and now.
When you look back on it now as an adult, how do you view it now from this perspective and the reflection back?
I still don't understand racism. All of us should be judged on who we are, not on the color of our skin. The whole world is different shades. What difference does it make? It shouldn't make any difference.
Now, you mentioned a mob and hoodlums. In feel comfortable telling us about some specifics about your mom?
There were a number of people who showed up apparently with their curlers still in their hair and their bedroom slippers on, which in that climate of the day, you didn't go out of the house like that. From my perspective, you don't participate in mob violence of any kind. I disapproved of it then, and I disapprove of it now. And the idea that people in the United States of America would behave that way towards other people was unbelievable to me then, and it still is. They appeared to be not local, and from what we read in the newspaper, the governor of the state, Orville Faubus, had used this as a political ploy to appeal to the segregationists in the state in order to get himself elected. And I think that was the motivation behind it.
And do you feel that the students probably could have handled it better themselves with the adults, hadn't been so involved?
Yes, no question.
Explain that to us.
As I said earlier, we expected the segregation to end. Everybody was prepared for it, and I think that if the adults had stayed out of it and not made it a political opportunity for the governor, it would have been, Little Rock could have been a leader in civil rights. I think that what happened with the Little Rock integration crisis set up a climate all the way across the rest of the South for the problems they had in New Orleans, for the problems they had in Oxford, Mississippi, for the problems they had with George Wallace. Had Little Rock exercised its integrity to be a leader, then we could have changed everything, and I really believe that. And there was no, I think that the reputation that Little Rock got for Orville Faubus's behavior will haunt us for generations to come.
Now, the young man that was in the class with you, you shared the book with him.
Mm-hmm.
Did that situation get better for him as the school year went along?
We had a wonderful math teacher who kept that classroom in control, and everybody was polite to him from then on. That did not make it easier for him because he had to deal with all of his other classes during the day. But I think if you'll ask him, I think he will say that that class was one of his better classes.
Could you tell how the other students, African American students, as we would probably call at that time, colored students, were treated in passing in the hallway or things like that? Could you tell personally how they were treated?
When I saw them, they were always, when you're in a situation like that, you have to kind of hold everything back. You have to endure it, and they went through a good deal of instruction out of school about how to comport themselves in class. It was very difficult on them. It was very difficult on any sensitive individual who was going to school that year.
And did they seem to stick together? Did they?
Oh yes, they had to. Mm-hmm.
They had to?
Yes, protection.
Now, how do you feel about race relations today?
I think that there is a lot of racism still. I think that there is, it's underground a lot now, but it still exists.
It's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was the neighborhood like during that period of time?
It was not quite transitional. It was middle class housing across the street. I lived about 12 blocks away from there. This was right before the white flight west. So it was a stable neighborhood of lovely older homes.
And how has integration personally affected you?
It's affected me to the extent that I no longer will tolerate racism with other people. Everybody should, again, be judged on the basis of their character, not on the color of their skin. I love Martin Luther King's statement about that. I have always refused to live in the suburbs. I've always lived downtown in Arkansas and Little Rock. I refuse to participate in white flight, so that has directly affected me.
Since you have chosen not to participate in white flight, does that mean that you've probably lost relationships with other friends and families who have moved away?
No, not necessarily, because most of my friends feel the same way I do.
Now, how did the crisis of 1957 redefine your goals in your life?
I'm not sure that it really did. I never graduated from high school. The students who had enough credits at the end of that year were able to, which I did, take this Scholastic Aptitude Test and go on to college, and which I did, and I went on to the local university, UALR, then Little Rock University. And I think that one of the hardest things was that I really couldn't get over the emotional trauma of that year. I lost 20 pounds in about 2 weeks at the beginning of the year. And I dropped out of school after a semester and went to New York and lived for several years and then married. It postponed my going back to school for 10 years. And I started raising a family and realizing that an education was very important, so I went back to college.
So listening to you, not only the black students at the time were emotionally affected.
Terribly.
But a lot of the white students were emotionally affected.
They were, particularly those who were shattered. They closed the schools the following year. I didn't want to stay in the South. I was so angry at the South that I wanted to leave, which is what I did.
You have any other experiences about some other friends or relatives that might have suffered as you did? Did you hear any?
No, because my siblings were already, my sister had already graduated and gone on to college.
What about neighbors or other friends?
I don't recall discussing it with them. A number of them left, as I did, to go to school in other states, to finish high school or to go on to college. One of my best friends moved to Germany as an exchange student, but she had planned to do that anyway.
Now, as an adult, once again, looking back, is there something that could have been done differently to handle that situation?
Oh, definitely, but that's hindsight. Again, if Orville Faubus had chosen another method of approaching it, if a number of the city leaders had stood up immediately and said, no, stop this right now, I think it could have been changed, but they didn't.
What might you have done at that time if they had asked for Robin Woods?
I'll tell you what I did do. I arranged a radio host, her name was Samuelson, somewhere that's got to be on tape, asked me if I could get together some of the segregationists and 2 of the black students and me and one other fellow who we called ourselves moderates. We met at a Catholic church and they taped it. We had a 2-hour conversation with the segregationist girls and we converted them from segregationists, their segregationist viewpoint. They apologized and said that they realized they had been wrong. One of them was Sammy Dean Parker, who is on the list to be interviewed. And as soon as she got home, her parents told her that she couldn't be broad-minded. She had to go back to her narrow-minded point of view. This particular broadcast was broadcast nationally, except that it was blacked out in Little Rock, blacked out in Arkansas. So I tried to help in that respect. I also met with a number of reporters and tried to get students involved in saying, look, we've got to change this around. And I was forcibly told by Jess Matthews, who was the principal, that I had better shut up, that I would be expelled from school if I didn't.
Was that frightening for you?
Very, very, because I was 16 years old. And this was back in a time when you did not have sit-down strikes or participate in anything like that. So I was really stepping out of line to disobey.
Well, how did your parents feel about that?
My parents were divorced, but my mother was totally in support of me, as well as my sister.
During that time, did you hear very much discussion about the black leaders who were pushing for the integration, the Bates, Elsie, and Daisy Bates? Did you hear very much discussion?
Only that which was in the paper, and I thought they were very courageous.
You mentioned to me earlier that you were on Oprah last year. Was that the first time that you had an opportunity to see the Little Rock
Yes,
Nine?
yes. Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like?
It was wonderful. Just great. Oprah is a remarkable woman.
And the Little Rock Nine, at least the ones that attended the programming, how did they appear to you to be today as adults?
Well, they've all been advocates of nonviolent integration since 1957, and they've been spokespeople. And they have learned to deal with the media, and as brilliant people, all of them, they've managed to overcome, I believe, all the obstacles that they had to face. They had to.
Now, why were you asked to attend that taping?
Because it was very interesting. They asked the 9 if there had been any white students that they remembered who had tried to help, and I was the only one they could remember.
And one of them had said something about your face was one of the friendly faces that they saw every day.
Hmm.
How did that make you feel?
I was
Knowing
very
they possibly
touched.
looked for you.
I was very touched. Because when I would meet them in the hall, what I would try to do would have eye exchange and smile, because a smile can do a lot.
Did you have any serious repercussions because you were friendly to them from your fellow students?
Actually, I really didn't, outside of that first day and when they followed me home and spat on me. And when they did that, I just turned around and looked at them. And they went away. And I think that if I had shown any emotion, then they would have known they'd gotten to me, and I refused to do that.
Fear.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking for the fear in your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Robert, I've enjoyed talking with you. Is there anything that you would like to discuss to let us know in regards to the crisis and your life today and looking back?
I wish people could remember the golden rule. If we did, it would make things a lot simpler.
And the golden rule?
Is do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Absolutely.
Well, just have a couple of questions. You're actually the first person who has taken on the cause issue that strongly. I think that many people think that there's a combination of factors, and the policy was just one of them. But when you have spoken of it, you seem pretty strongly convinced that fathers had a lot to do with the problem.
I do.
Could you elaborate on that a little?
I wish I'd read Roy Reed's book yet. Has it been published yet?
Which book is that?
Roy Reed, he is a former...
I haven't seen it.
Okay, it's supposed to come out shortly, if it hasn't already come out. He's done a history of Faubus, and we've discussed it. I really think, because I knew him back in '57 when he was a reporter for the Arkansas Gazette, I do think that the reporters, the press at that time, really felt that it was purely a political issue and that he was doing it to be reelected, and that he was specifically doing it to prey upon the fears of the people of Arkansas, particularly the rural people. And if he had been a leader, because Faubus himself was not a segregationist, he came out of the hills of northwest Arkansas, and he had been an early, probably had communist leanings early on, very liberal. So that he would, but he was one of the best politicians that one could see if you judge politicians on the basis of how they utilize their intelligence to get votes, probably along the line of Huey Long. I thought, there have not been very many people in my life that I have really, really, really come close to hating and using the term hatred. And I thought for the longest time that he was one of them. And then I met him in the 80s. And he was one of the most charming men I have ever met. He had a persona that could charm the birds right out of the trees. And I understood immediately how he could compel people and get them to vote for him. But I still think that he did it from personal gain.
So you think he switched from what appeared to be a very moderate stance?
I
He got
do.
a lot of moderate votes.
I do.
Solely because he thought it would better his political position?
Exactly.
Or perhaps because he thought his political position would be in danger if he did not?
Exactly.
Well, that's interesting. And that doesn't really conflict with what I've read. We just haven't had anybody really come out and say it, I guess.
I've never been one to not state my opinions.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that the political climate it's such a shame because it seems like the children are the ones always in upset.
They are. They are. If you look back at the Arkansas Gazette, they won the Pulitzer Prize because they wouldn't back down. And Mr. Ned High School, who owned the paper at that time, was threatened with boycotts, and he lost a lot of advertising, but he absolutely refused to back down because this was a matter of principle. And if Faubus had had the same integrity, he would have done the same thing.
Well, tell us a little bit about the newspaper war as far as war wars at that time, as you remember it.
The newspaper war was really not a war back in the 50s, because the Gazette was head and shoulders above anything else in the state and one of the finest newspapers in the country.
But the Democrat was there.
The Democrat has always been there. But the Gazette had absolutely first-class writers there, and there were two separate issues. One was a liberal paper, and the other was a conservative paper. And the Gazette happened to be the liberal paper. Happened to be the one we read.
We were lucky it was here.
I wish it still was.
Yes, it did.
Can you tell us how you feel about Central High School now and the future of Central?
I don't know what the future is. I think education has reached a crisis period in the United States, not just the South. And I don't know how to address that issue at all, except that when I was going to school, school was really tough. It was tough at Central, it was tough at Dunbar. I've met a lot of the older teachers who taught at Dunbar High School, which was a black high school, and they're equally appalled at what they see has happened to education today. Back in those days, you had standards, and an A was an A B was a B, and a C was a C, and if you didn't measure up, you didn't measure up, and there was no excuse. And both schools produced brilliant students, and I think that we have got to go back to similar standards so that we can produce brilliant students again, and that the brilliant students will come in black and white, and it has to be according to ability.
And that is true of all schools and just the education system.
Exactly.
But do you feel that Central turns out a lot of
I know that it has.
evaluation?
It has had it's always had a reputation for academic excellence, and I've known a lot of teachers who have taught there, and a number of them have quit, particularly those who have been in the AP teaching staff, advanced placement, honors classes.
And why did they quit?
They say that it's a lack of standards, that the standards have been lowered, and they did not wish to participate.
Are you involved with the Visitor Center and the Prospective Museum for Central High School?
I was asked to early on, and I've had so many irons in the fire the past 2 years that I have not.
How do you feel about the Visitor Center?
I think it's a wonderful idea. Perhaps it will help Arkansas get over its negative image.
Do you think there's a chance then that the Visitor Center and Museum, the place that examines these issues, will help resolve some of the issues?
I hope so. I hope so. But I think the issues can only be resolved if people make a determination within themselves that they're not going to be racist anymore. I get so tired of racism being hurled from both sides that this is a huge world. We come in all shades of black and red and brown and yellow and what have you, and we should all be a family of man.
Well, hopefully then, do you think that the educational perspective of having a Visitor Center and Museum might help in some small way?
I hope so. Everything helps in some small way. Tiny steps. The first journey begins with a single step.
You have to start somewhere
Mm-hmm.
to make a difference, make a change. Well, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I hope I helped in a tiny step.
Screen fades. Once again shows the arrowhead of the National Park Service, Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site, with accompanying social media handles and logos.